So on our 1978 crew cab, we have done the front clip and some mechanical work, and we've done some body work, and I think now it's time to start putting the interior back together so we can actually, use it a little bit. Because there's so many little things that need done, I'm going to try to break this up into two sections. We're going to do kind of the dashboard and everything that goes into the dashboard, like the gauge cluster and the radio and the AC and all that. I'm going to try to knock that out in this video, and then hopefully in the next video we'll do the seats and the floors and everything else is involved. I'm going to break it up because otherwise it would just be way too long, because there's a lots of little things that are going to go into this, and I don't want to just gloss over and ram through the whole thing. I want to show a little bit of detail here and there when I do some of the more tricky bits or things that actually need fixed or repaired. So rather than just ramrod through it, we're going to do the dashboard in this video, and then we'll do the rest of the interior in another video. So as far as this gauge cluster goes, this is really foggy. I'd like to repaint the needles and clean it up in general. I think everything works other than maybe some gauge calibration, but I'm just going to go through and clean it up and give it a once over. So I've cleaned up the gauges and cleaned up the circuit board on the back. I'm going to put new bulbs in it, but before I do that, I'm going to repaint the gauge needles with special fluorescing paint that fluoresces under light so you can see them better at night. So I'm going to repaint the needles. I'm also going to put on a new sheet of clear plastic because the old one was very foggy and you couldn't see through it. You can get them online for like $60. They're really cheap. Once I get the needles painted, it'll look really good, and then I'll put in newer style LED bulbs and test them, and then that'll be ready to go. When I refurbish one of these clusters, I almost always put in these LED bulbs, but I take out all the fixtures and clean them up, make sure they have good contact, and take out the gauge contacts and clean them up and make sure they're nice, and then I put them back together. And I also gutted this and cleaned the plastic and everything inside so it doesn't have dirt behind it. It's nice and clean. So let's continue on with that. Okay, we got our gauge needles painted and we got our nice clear lens glass on. So now it's time to update the lighting on this thing. So we have a refurbished cluster. All the light bulbs have been replaced with LEDs. It has been checked. I had to check all the bulbs before I got to this point because these LEDs are polarized, so you got to get them in one way. So I did verify that. Let's put it in and make sure I didn't break anything and make sure all the connections are still good. The main thing with these clusters is this plug, not the plug itself, but where it goes into the unit there. Those tend to delaminate, and then the copper curls and stuff, and you get bad connections. So you gotta be real careful with that, but let's put this in and, I don't know, see what happens. So there's the gauge cluster. If I was rich and had money, I would buy one of those $1,000 nice new fancy gauge clusters with either digital gauges or fancy new electromechanical digital gauges. But that is not going to happen in this truck, maybe ever, if those gauges keep working. Well, she's starting to go back together. I guess climate control's in glovebox, and we can squeeze the dash pad back on there. So I want to talk just briefly about the AC system that's going in this truck. This is a system made by Clardy Manufacturing back in the 80s. It was manufactured as a add-on unit that a dealer would add on to a truck because so many trucks back then were made without air conditioning, or they had a truck on the lot and they wanted to add air conditioning. So Clarity made this for a lot of vehicles, not just Chevy square bodies. They were even put in some BMWs, and they did a lot of custom plastic blow molding and things to make the cases for the evaporators and that sort of thing. But it seems like most of the compressors they used were these Diesel Kiki brand air compressors. This is not a Sandon AC compressor. So when I got this on this truck, this system, and I moved it over here, but when I got it, the compressor was just tied off to the side and the brackets were gone. I had to custom fab that bracket years ago. I'm sure it's not proper or anything, but it keeps the compressor solid and aligned. And I've made a few improvements to it over the years to reduce vibration and things. So that is not an original bracket. I don't know what the brackets actually look like, and I really couldn't find much on it, but that's the compressor. And then of course they used, instead of, there's no crimp fittings on here, they're all hose clamps and barrier hose. And then of course they just put a condenser in the front with some custom made just metal formed brackets to screw it to the core support. And then they just drill holes through the firewall, which I reproduced on this truck for the hoses. One thing that I added that is not part of the initial Clarity system is this valve here to shut off the heater core. It just increases the efficiency of the system just a little bit, because you don't have hot water going through these hoses into the cabin and circulating all the time when the AC is running. The way this works is it's a normally open valve. Under normal circumstances, this is just flowing like normal, like it would. But then as soon as you turn on the AC compressor, I have it wired into that trigger circuit. The AC compressor trigger circuit activates this relay, which takes power from the battery and closes this valve. And it will keep it closed until you pull power from the circuit, which is when you turn the AC off so that the valve opens back up. It just gives you a little bit of efficiency that you don't have that heat coming into the cabin all the time. And this unit has its own fan, and here's the plastic case with the evaporator. Now I've replaced the evaporator, and this evaporator in this case is from an 80s Jeep Wrangler. It's almost an exact fit. I had to modify it a little bit to get the ports to match up, but the size and everything for the case is almost exact. So basically there's a custom head unit for the climate control, and this just hides up under the glove compartment and dash here, and then they ran just flex hoses to vents, unlike the blow molded factory vent tubes that would be in there. You do have to modify the glove compartment because it takes up space in the glove compartment. They cut the glove compartment box out and modified that, and I will show that when I get to that. We'll probably have to figure out a solution to that again. But it's kind of an elegant solution because it looks factory when it's put in, and even the head unit looks factory the way they modified it, and period correct and everything, and you don't see it when it's all enclosed. Downside is you can't run the AC on defrost because the AC only comes through, obviously, these vents. You can't change the vent position for the AC, but that's fine. When you put it on defrost, it just runs the heater like it normally would in a non-AC truck. Advantage, if you get one of these, you also get the floor vents. So I wanted to take a minute and explain the way Clarity revised the head unit. So the only difference on the faceplate, the main difference you'll see, is this says AC instead of off. So basically they just pulled the background off and replaced the wording. But behind the plate it's much different. The electronics are heavily revised, and there's actually an additional switch that goes on the bottom here that connects to this pin here, that when you move it to control the hot cold, it also turns off the AC. So there's another way to turn off the AC other than just a switch or moving this. When you move it over to hot, it would turn off the AC, but that's been removed. I removed it because it was extra complication that I didn't need. There's also an electronic control box that controls thermostats and temperatures so that things don't freeze or the compressor doesn't overheat. That I could not find wiring for as hard as I looked, and that box is gone. So we've replaced them with like pressure switches and things, I think. No, maybe this has no safety systems. I don't know. You could replace them. The way to do it would be to replace it with safety switches. I'm not sure if I have done that yet. This fan switch has been revised. The bottom switch is completely off. No power goes through the unit when this switch is all the way down. The first click is your fan speed, either for heat or AC. It routes it to either fan depending on which you have selected up here based off of this switch. So when you move it to AC, it activates this switch and routes power to the AC compressor, but also to the AC side of the switch. And then when you move it to heater or defrost, it turns that off. Obviously, because it can't run it through the defrost vents, it can only run it through the upper vents. So that's pretty much all there is to it. There's just double fan switch wiring because you need to wire each set of fans because there's 2 fans now. And the front plate of the head unit ends up looking very, very factory, actually. Or period correct. I shouldn't say factory because the factory one with AC would have all kinds of other settings and anything and all that. So your mechanical side is still the same with all your mechanical wire controls, cable controls, but they've just changed the electrical inside the head unit. And where they got these switches and everything, I don't know, and where I would get replacement switches if these broke, I have no idea either. You can find these head units online once in a while because they did make a lot of them back in the day, but it's pretty much hit and miss. So this is what we're using for now. So I had to modify this unit a little bit because the AC hoses come right back here, and I didn't do this before, and it fit really hard. So I cut out this section. Now what this removes is this clip, which actually was not used on this truck, but is used on this truck because it has a third thing down there that controls whether it's taking in fresh air or cabin air, I guess. Which I'm not going to use anyway. I'm just going to tie it one way or the other. So my only remaining thing is this defrost thing that clips in up here. It's very close to the defrost vent, which I don't remember it being in the other truck. So it you know, like the clip for that line is right up against there. So, but the line still has to bend past there. So I don't know how that's going to work. I'm putting in an LED bulb, I think. Yeah, so we got LED bulbs there. I don't know if you can see it, it's there too. Let's get the correct connections there and then see if we can slot this climate control head unit into position. Alright, the head unit is installed, and as you can see the tolerances are very, very tight. Let's test it out now we have it in. That's the AC. Blowing some good air through there. Okay, let's move it over to heater. Okay, it's coming out on the floor. That's good. I'm having trouble with the low speeds. The resistor pack I bought cheap online and put it in really only works on high. And it is working on the other ones. Like, you can barely hear the fan. It's just not working great. But mostly what we're going to be using here is the AC. So everything is functional in there as much as it is crammed in there, but it'll work. Okay, I think we finally got the right AC belt for this. So I'm going to put that on, and then I say I'm going to put that on. I've tried this like 3 times already, but I had one belt measurement in my notes and it was wrong. So I've been going through my belt stash and doing everything trying to find the right belt for this. So I think I finally got the right belt. So I'm going to put that on, and then hopefully we can maybe put a little refrigerant in the system and see how well it holds a charge. So, well, it's been about It's been actually like 2 weeks since I vacked this system down, and it is still holding fantastic. So I'm gonna vac it down one more time, and then we'll throw some gas and oil in this thing and see where we're at. All right, we've got some gas in it. Time to fire up the truck and check this out. Alright, pressures are looking good for what the temperature is today. I also just discovered there is a humongous exhaust leak down there. Which I will have to fix, resolve at some point. We've started getting cold air out of this, temperature slowly dropping. We'll continue to monitor this and see what we get out of it here. It's only been running a couple of minutes. I was pretty close on the initial charge I put into it. I only needed a little bit more gas to catch up. So we're pushing about almost 240 on the low side. It's pretty hot. Ambient, I don't know. We're probably in the 90s for ambient, so although that might look a little high, it's very hot out. So I wish the high side were higher, but we're running at a very low throttle. If I goose the throttle here, watch the gauge while I goose it. You can see it does rise. Probably in an ideal world, this pulley would be a little bit size different. It's got a very low idle. I don't know what it's set at, but it's just kind of loping along here. It'll put out some cold air. You just got to give it a chance to catch up. It's also got a big interior space this time, as opposed to that little cab on that truck there. Pressures are still looking good. Also don't have the upper fan shroud. I forgot to put that on. I'll have to shut it down and put that shroud on so we can get more air moving through the cores there. That could contribute to cooling efficiency. Overall, though, it is working. My primary concern at this point is that the system is sealed and I can get everything buttoned back up and finalized. All right, so with it shut off, it is equalizing here. That's good. That means the expansion valve is still opening and closing for the most part. If your system gets stuck on high or low, sometimes that means the expansion valve isn't working. I'm gonna put that shroud on. All right, got the fan shroud back on. Cools a little bit better with that on, and everything in the AC is good and working. I wanted to just briefly talk about this fan shroud a little bit here. This is the original 78 fan shroud with the 78 upper support, but this is the 86 core support, and it's a little bit different as far as where the fan shroud support or the radiator upper support bolts to it. I got kind of lucky here. There were holes drilled through here, and this isn't factory, but I have the upper radiator support clamped to the core support. It's actually very, very solid. And of course the rubber bushings under there support the radiator, and then the fan shroud bolts to this. And that actually worked very successfully. There's actually a nice kind of tight seal between the fan shroud and the radiator, just like there should be. And so we'll get nice airflow through the radiator, and all the rubber bushings and everything fit real nice in there and with everything. So it really worked out really good there. The 86 shroud and support looks much different than this. It's very different. I don't have that because the factory shroud for this is long gone. It got chewed up and it kind of disintegrated. And the support for the radiator is long gone. I don't even know what happened to that, but I think it's built into the shroud, plastic part of the upper part of the shroud. I don't remember, but anyway, I don't have that to show you to compare, but I just, the upper bolt holes were kind of blown out just a little bit here, so I just added some washers to hold this fast, but it's really solid now. And the other thing I did was, these are stapled together, the upper and lower halves, but I like to be able to take them apart separately so I don't have to unbolt the lower half and go through that mess and pull the radiator shroud out as a whole, which means you got to take the fan off and all that. So if I ever need to service anything in there, I can just take these bolts out, and on the other side, and I can take the top off separately. I never like those factory staples. Most of my trucks, square bodies that I get like this, I modify like that at some point, so you can pull the upper radiator shroud separate from the lower. All right, this wasn't really going to be a technical video, but I'm going to throw this in because every time I want to pull one of these glove box latches out, I got to look it up because I can't remember. So I'm going to do this not just for your purposes, but also for mine, because I'm forgetful. So it's easier if you latch it, put it in the latched position, and then over here on this side, there's a hole here, and you press down on a pin inside that hole, and then you pull out the front. For reference, let me show you a close-up here of what I'm doing since my hands are blocking the view. You're going to take a screwdriver or a pick and go over here to this side. Here's the top of the glove compartment, and you're going to press down on the pin through this slot here. So you're going to press down on that, and you're going to pull the knob out until you get to the second pin, and then you're going to press the second pin in and do the same thing and pull it out the rest of the way. So this central, this lock body comes out of the inside, and then there's a nut that screws this part on. So they come out like this. So you want to press down on this pin in here and work the front out there. That's not supposed to happen. Okay, try that again. I think I just broke it. I'm working out the front latch here. Okay, so now that it's out a little bit, there's a second pin. So you're going to go down in here again, and you're going to push that pin in, and then you're going to pull it out the rest of the way. So these are the two pins we were pushing on. This handle, yeah, I ruined the handle here. I may have to, I've got to restake that into the thing. Be careful when you're, I was using a screwdriver and I was prying out on the handle. So just be careful when you do that so you don't do what I just did. I'm going to put this back in, and then I'm going to restake it there into the, I'm going to try to restake it into the seat. Anyway, set that aside, and then this has a hex fitting in there. Actually, it's not a hex, it's an octagon. I don't have the tool for that, but you can, you know, get a, you know, you can get a tool in there, and you just kind of get it loosened. And this unscrews from the body of the latch there, and set that aside, and that's all there is to that. And of course, assembly is the reverse of removal. You'll take this, of course, with the handle that isn't broken, and you'll slot it in here, and you might have to push down the pins a little bit to get them in. The pins stick up there, so you might have to, when you're putting it in, you might have to stick your screwdriver down there and press your pin in so you can seat it. So if you do like I did and you pull the handle off, that's fine, it's all metal. Just tap it down into position there, and see, it's in, but it's kind of loose. So I'm gonna, it's staked a little bit from the factory here, so I'm just gonna give it a little bit more. Okay, so now it's reasonably tight, and that is the way it should be. I do love these older things where everything's made of metal and you can actually fix it. Alright, so the reason I'm doing this is the glove compartment from our 86 truck, which ironically used to be blue. And this is the inside that's been modified to go around the AC fan. No, they didn't do a fantastic job. They just kind of, you know, hacked it. But it is a glove compartment, and it's got something, and that's better than nothing. Now, in that truck, the hinge, they always break along here, you know, and you can buy new liners like this. But A, I can't afford it, and B, my duct tape fix is actually still working. I just put duct tape over the seam last time to bind it together, and it actually works pretty good. I'm surprised. Anyway, I'm taking this off because I need to paint this to match. So, yeah, we're gonna paint that, and I mean, I had to paint one of them because I'm painting the interior a little bit. So I picked this one because I did. I got the glove box in. I used the glove box from the 86 truck because it has the cutout. As much as I hate the smaller glove compartment, I don't have much of a choice. It has to be that way. So got a glove compartment now. I took the fuel valve out. So this is a standard fuel valve used in many vehicles of this era. However, it was never used in this one. I think Ford used some of these and some of the older Chevys maybe, but the factory switchover valves for this truck were dual function. They not only switched the fuel and sometimes the return on the later ones, but also the fuel gauge. It had an electric switch to switch the fuel gauge over from tank to tank. This one does not. So if I'm going to use this valve, which I'm going to try to, I'm going to check it out, and if it's in good shape, I'm going to use it. If that's the case, I'm going to have to add a separate switch for the electric, and you're just going to have to remember to hit that switch. And of course I will try to label it, you know, what is tank 1 and 2, or left and right. Anyway, I've got to check this valve out and see if it's any good. Maybe clean it up a little bit. You know, some of these, the packing could be bad. I don't know. Take a look at this, get these old hoses off, and I'll maybe replace these plastic things. I don't know. We'll take a look. I have tested the valve, and it is actually in really good shape. So the inside is here, straight across from the stem of the valve, and then it just, as you turn this, it goes through the hole to one of the three. So I'm just going to use these two side ports for the left and right tanks, and then this for the output. And that way, when you're in the vehicle, you'll be able to turn the valve to the left or the right to select your left or right tank appropriately. And then at some point I will put probably an electric switch. There were some switches mounted here. Oh, where were they? Oh, down there maybe in those holes. And I'll put a switch in there with left or right for the left or right tank there. And that way, even if the labels get old and faded, you'll still have left and right on the valve and left and right on the switch. So you'll, you know, have a little bit of logic there. So then I just have to route fuel line to the valve, and of course we're waiting to put in this new tank, but at any rate I can put this valve in, and I know I'm going to use it, so when I put the flooring in I can cut a hole in the flooring for it. And that was the main reason that I'm doing this now with the interior stuff. But I'm going to cap this for now to protect it and reinstall it, and then when I'm ready I can hook this up appropriately. Well, I ran wires for the gas tank. I wasn't going to do that yet, but I figure since I'm doing everything inside the cab, let's get that out of the way. So I don't have a switch for that yet. I need a, single pole double throw with a, I guess an off in the middle. I don't know. No, it doesn't need an off in the middle, but you know what I mean. Anyway, I don't have the switch for that yet. I got to order the switch. I don't have one in stock. I got lots of off-on switches, but not on switches. So I have those wires run, and I don't have this tank in yet, so that wire's just sitting there with a little extra till I can do the tank and the wiring on the back there. And I did run the hoses for this valve. I ran the fuel lines for this valve, and so right now it's set up with the pointer to the passenger side for the passenger tank, and if you want to run the driver's side, put the pointer to the driver's side. There's no return in this system. This is the older system with no return, which is just fine. I don't care if I don't have any vapor lock problems, so I'm not worried about that. Bonus with this valve here, since it's made for 3 tanks, if you put it in the middle position, yeah, that's fuel off, so you could actually run your system dry by turning it to the off position. Alright, so here's the radio that was in our truck. It came with this equalizer that did power on when it was in the truck. The radio did not, and I don't know if that was wiring or something else. And also this external speaker thingy, in addition to the speakers that were in the truck. I'm gonna try to sort some of this out and see maybe if we can get some of it to power on. Alright, so I've got the wiring separated from the equalizer. Now, this one's very simple, and they're actually still labeled, so left speaker, right speaker, ground, and this one with the fuses that I've checked as power. I've got my jump box hooked to it for 12 volts. Turn that on. I think this is power. Oh, we got light. So we are getting power. I need to hook it to a speaker. So I've got it hooked up to the... Oh, stop your beeping. That's an annoying feature on that jump box. Got it hooked up to the left speaker. I tried the right speaker first. Just I assume this is right speaker. Yep. And I got nothing, but this one... I don't know if you can hear it, but I get a little click there. Got some clicks and pops. But I don't get anything on tuning. Let's see if I can find a tape. Got George Jones here. Let's see what happens. Which way do you go in? Like this. Gotta turn you on. Is your annoying beeping? What is this? Oh my goodness, it's doing something. Fast forward. That's fast forward. That's eject. Huh. I mean, it was kind of playing. Sound quality is horrible. Makes it sound like a freight train going down the track. Come on. Eject. Eject. There we go. Alright. Well, we're definitely getting... Oh, you be quiet. Definitely getting some sound out of it. One thing I did not try... I didn't try the AM, FM. Don't know which is in, and oh, I got a red light there. Try some tuning here. Oh, we're just busted loose. What happened there? Oh, I forgot to... Oh, did I just break it? What in the world? I think I broke the tuner. Yeah, I think I broke the tuner stalk just by turning it. Well, that's disappointing. Well, now. Oh my goodness, that beeping. Oh, you be quiet. Oh, let me see if I can... I don't know. I'll play around a little bit more with this broken thing and see if I can get anything out of it. Alright, well, I extracted some broken tape bits out of it. Might have explained some of the noise we were hearing, but it appears that this tuner is supposed to work by pulling this wire that both moves the needle and moves the tuning wheel here, which is kind of interesting. It's all mechanical. Okay, I think I found the problem. A piece of the tuning wheel broke off there, right there, and so the wire doesn't want to feed correctly when it reaches that point. I can turn it. Everything moves properly. until it reaches that point, and then see it wants to miss and unspool because the thing's a little bent, and then this gets loose and it can't do its thing. But if you turn it manually, you can kind of get it back where it's supposed to be and the tension is right. I mean, I have this piece, but I don't have enough to really fix it, and this isn't worthwhile because you can get a cheap eBay radio for a couple bucks. Would have liked to have this vintage unit working, but that's alright. Got this turned up to maximum volume, and this is all I'm getting out of this thing. Yeah, it's pretty sad. I guess this speaker is shot. Yep, and that would be why. It is old and rotten underneath. I thought it looked good, but it's very crispy where you can actually see it. So, alright, new speaker required. Alright, so good news. I got this radio working, I think. Tape player is very noisy, but that can be fixed. We used to love. So I need to test it. Oh, hush. I need to test it with a radio antenna, and if it continues to work, I'm going to try to fix this wheel. Alright, so we got, even with no antenna, don't know if you could hear it there, but we did get a little bit of a station. So I think that might be worth fixing and putting into the truck if I can find a speaker. The original speaker was blown, so if I can just find a speaker that'll fit into that hole, we can have a radio for $0. So I'm gonna try to fix this wheel, see what I can do, because if I can fix that wheel, then I guess this entire thing can be salvaged, because somewhere I have the tuning faceplate for this, which is right here, and that goes on here, and it also has the light stereo and tape, which I didn't notice before. So that's stereo, that's tape. I don't know how if you know you're in AM or FM, I guess just because of the tuning. I'm not proud of this, but I think that I have it fixed to the point that it will function without the cable coming off. It's actually the first test since I put it back together, so we're seeing this all for the first time together. Okay, when I put this back together, this board, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but this board is bending this way, and that's partly what's contributing to this wheel torquing around and being cocked at an angle that way. So really the board should be more pushed back this way. When I put this back together, I'm going to put this rubber bushing between the case of this tuning wheel, and it's rubber, so it's non-conductive. I'm going to put it in there, and that'll help wedge the board just a tad this way against the metal top case, and it'll hopefully keep it from being stressed anymore. I don't want it to break, and I'm worried that with time that board is going to bend so much that it will get overly stressed, in addition to the wheel. But so let's put this back together. We'll clean it up a little bit, clean some of the dust off, and put this faceplate back on that I've replaced the tuning dial gauge thingy readout. Replace that and put that on, and let's after we get it back together, we'll just verify that it's still working. So you can see I'm putting this bushing in, and it should keep this board upright. So it's just going to be locked in position by the case as I lock that down. I had to pull it way forward because of this AC hose back here. The back of the radio is right against that AC hose. It barely fits. but I got it in. Well, let's test it. I have this old speaker temporarily wired up that I know works.
By doing what I just told you.
Hey, there we go.
Go into these games. Draymond Green, Klay Thompson,
Guess that's
Andrew Wiggins.
AM. There we go. Not great. Not great at all. Yep, there we go. Well, it's in there and it works. I mean, I'll take it for now. It's better than nothing, and it fills the hole. And it's not just a dead unit filling the hole, so I don't know. Sure, I'll call it a win. Well, in one of my cabinets of miscellaneous things, I found these speakers, which are definitely not correct and definitely very tiny, but I have them and they're free. I don't know, let's hook them up and see if we can get some sound out of them. I mean, it's working. Also, this light is on back here. It's just too bright out, you can't see it. I pulled this plate off and double checked. Well, I put the dash pad on. I'm working along through this. Dash pad fits pretty decent for being off of an 86, and I'm not even sure that this is an original 86 dash pad. I think this might be aftermarket because it's in too good shape, really. But there's some, you know, it doesn't fit tight quite in the corners, but it's on there tight and it looks okay. It'll do fine for a work truck, so that's all I need out of it. All right, I got the bezel back on. There's obviously some cosmetic issues. I'm not gonna lie about that. But one of the big ones, and I noticed this with the original 78 bezel, is there's a giant gap here. And I do have the steering column pulled up tight, and the dash is pushed down. So I don't know. It was that way with the 78 dash pad and bezel as well. I don't know, maybe that's just a thing. I'll have to live with it, I guess. I wanted to address one of the elephants in the room with one of these 70s to 80s dashboard conversions. And that is, this stuff all fits, yes. The new style dash pad fits fine because the metal underneath is the same. You know, and the radios and the climate controls and the vents and all that stuff converts over. Except the light and washer switch are different. So if you put one of these later bezels on, your hole for your light switch is going to be up here because the light switch is moved up on the later trucks. And of course, the wiper washer switch is on the stalk, whereas in these earlier trucks, it's on the dash. There's not a lot of good ways around this if you want to keep, you know, the later style bezel. You could do a better work on the plastic than I did on this just kind of janky cutout here. If you do it wrong, it's hard to get in because you got to get the cluster in around you got to get the bezel in around the switches without damaging anything. Anyway, I opted for just cutting this out. I could have done a much better job of doing that, and I am going to call myself out on that and highlight my, you know, bad craftsmanship there, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. It's just plastic work. At the end of the day, I don't really care that much. To cut the whole thing out, it was easier to do it this way. If you wanted to do a really fine job, you know, you could leave this cut out and everything, but this wiper switch is still going to be recessed back in. You see how on the bezel they have this angled piece here to kind of take it back because the bezel sticks out. And you'll never have that here unless you put it in, no matter how good you do. So unless you do a lot of high-tech plastic fab work there, you never have that look perfect. And I'm really not going for perfect. When you sit in the driver's seat, you know, that's what you're going to see. It's one of the sacrifices I made for putting this bezel in. I have my fuel tank switch wired up. I'm going to install it there, but let's make sure it works first. Ignition on. Which one are we on? Not sure. Let's try this tank. Oh, that's the green side, so yeah, it's pegging out. Oh, there we go. Needle's moving. Our switch is wired up and working. All right, I'll put it down here. And the reason I mounted it down so low is those holes are already there, and I don't want to drill more holes in this dash if I can help it. So that's where it's going to be. So that's the gauge switch, and this is the tank switch, and our fuel system is complete. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I did install the trailer brake. I opted to put it over here because there's going to be other things, switches and stuff over there, and I want to be able to operate it. I like to be able to operate it with my left hand as opposed to my right hand, because my right hand is going to be shifting. So I want to be able to, you know, shift, steer with my knee, and operate the trailer brake with my left hand if I need to in a pinch. I've seen people put it down here in the center on this piece, and I have done that in the past, but the problem is when you're sitting up here, the steering column kind of blocks it. Whereas if you're sitting up here, you can still kind of see the trailer brake over here. We have the dash, bezel, and everything back together. I did install this vent here, even though it's not hooked up to anything, just because there's a hole in the plate. Dear Liza, dear Liza. I needed something to fill it, so that's there. Right now the radio speakers are mounted down there because those are temporary until I can get, you know, real speakers and possibly a real radio, and all that's going to have to be rearranged. So for right now, that's going to do the job. So that's the dash, and now we can move on to the floor and the seats and start getting this arranged. So that's gonna do it for this video. Thanks for watching. As always, I appreciate any likes, comments, subscribes that you can give us. It really helps the channel, puts me in a good mood, and really gives me encouragement for doing some of these videos. So I always appreciate it. Tune in next time. Hopefully we'll be doing the rest of the interior, the floors, the seats, and that kind of thing. And as always, thanks for watching.